it's a really unique opportunity to have that interaction with everybody and really be part of the whole community of CRM practitioners, vendors, providers, service providers.
I think it was a fantastic event. I think we've reached a point where CRM is ready for the next revolution, and this conference really brought the right content to set the pace for that.
It is the main event for our industry. It pulls together the who's who of the industry. Some of the most recognized, established, esteemed thought leaders come together for this event every year.
Everything I wanted to come for has happened, so it's been great.
It really is a great event that just keeps getting better.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's CRM Magazine web event brought to you by Calabrio, Neustar, and Nexidea. I'm Bob Fernikes. I'm the publisher of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. That clip that you just saw was promoting our CRM Evolution Conference in Washington, D.C. next week, April 9 to 11. So if you're in the area, please come on by. We'll also give you a $100 discount on a conference pass, so just look for a link or a code tomorrow in an email follow-up. Now for our presentation today, which is titled Intelligent Contact Centers in 2018, an Industry Update. Before we start, I just want to explain how you can be part of today's broadcast. We've got 3 great panelists, so if you have a question during the event, type it into the question box while it's still fresh, hit submit, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentations. If for some reason we don't get to your question, we'll follow up within a few days by email. Also, if you'd like a copy of the presentations today, you can find it on the player once the event is archived tomorrow, and you will receive an email leading you to the archive, so that should be easy enough as well. Now to introduce our speakers for today, we have Robin Butterfield. She's the Contact Center Analytics Consultant at Calabrio. We have Craig Pence, Vice President Risk Solutions at Neustar. Barbara Bacigalupe, Solutions Executive at Nexidea. And if you'd like to review any of their bios, just click on the arrows under their photos, and you can read all about them. So now I'm going to pass the event over to, again, Robin Butterfield. She's the Contact Center Analytics Consultant at Calabrio. Welcome to the broadcast, Robin.
Thank you so much, Bob. Really happy to be here today. So today I want to talk about a few technologies that can take your traditional contact center into an intelligent contact center. And here at Calabrio, we define an intelligent contact center as one that has the ability to use technology to empower their agents, one that gathers data from all their various enterprise applications, and most importantly, one that has the ability to mash this data together, simmer it down to find the gold nuggets of information that can provide you with the customer insights needed to make actionable change. And this is what we feel leads to better customer and employee experience. So today, every company is aware that their financial success is impacted by customer experience and loyalty. And now there's a lot more awareness that it's also impacted by employee experience and loyalty. Contact center management is also aware that there are new technologies that can assist in elevating their business, but some organizations often hesitate to implement new modern technologies. Why do you think that is? Maybe it's that they are aware of the technologies but resistant to change. Maybe they're so heads down in the day-to-day grind and have a lack of knowledge of the modern contact center practices, or maybe they use the excuse that the technology solutions are too expensive and they actually lack the information on how to compute an ROI of such an investment. But the bottom line is that sometimes leadership lacks the awareness of how detrimental outdated applications and infrastructure can be to the customer and employee experience alike. So though there are many different evolving technologies used with today's contact center solutions, I've chosen just a few to highlight in this session today. So what I'll be talking about are solutions that use the following technologies: crowdsourcing and collective intelligence, And I'll talk about how you can use this in your workforce management solutions today. Artificial intelligence and how this can be used for predicting outcomes based on a small sample size, and how it can assist in determining a caller's mood or attitude. And comprehensive business intelligence, where you can bring data together from all your different systems in the enterprise and mash it together for reporting using a single view of the truth. So before we start talking about contact solutions that use collective intelligence, or also referred to as crowdsourcing, let's level set about what it is. So in a nutshell, collective intelligence is the practice of obtaining and enlisting the services of a large number of people and finding where there's a common consensus. When people refer to crowdsourcing, usually it's a method of collective intelligence when they're referring to gathering and using the internet to widen their reach to get a giant-sized number of people to participate. One of the most basic examples of collective intelligence is on the TV game show of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I'm sure everybody has seen that. I know I got sucked into it a few years ago. When the contestant is not confident with their multiple choice answers, they can poll the audience. The contestant then sees the percentage of the audience who selected the various options, and then the contestant can make their final answer. This collective intelligence, while not always 100% correct, just by having the sheer volume of input will result in a better percentage of accurate outcomes. So Google search results and Wikipedia content also use crowdsourcing to determine their order of search results returned and to enrich their content of information on their pages. So all that is interesting, but now how does that relate to the contact center? With traditional contact centers, typically the scheduler creates various shifts, and depending on the forecasted need, they'll get the coverage for these shifts by assigning agent schedules. And there are really three basic types of schedules: fixed, variable, and dynamic. The fixed schedule has a set start and stop time and set days of the week. It doesn't really consider the variable forecast of the contact center. The scheduler is telling WFM when to schedule the agents and isn't really using the forecasting power of their WFM tool. Variable is where the day of the week and start times can be different every day, and it does indeed rely upon the WFM scheduling engine to look at the staffing requirements and attempt to match schedules to the contact center forecast, and of course to achieve service level goals. So that's good. But with dynamic, and this is where collective intelligence comes in, rather than dictate a handful of scheduling options, you give your agents an active role in the creation of their work schedules while still maintaining an appropriate balance between staffing needs and work rules. You still meet your staffing goals, but the agent is in control, picking their work window and their number of hours worked. So this is especially effective with work-at-home agents, those working with split shifts, students with variable class schedules, or just agents who need flexibility for day-to-day life balance. The result of using dynamic scheduling will allow you to hone your forecast, streamline scheduling, predict when you may have staffing voids, and give you better coverage for overtime. And it definitely reduces shrinkage and leaves you with a more engaged and loyal workforce. Another technology embedded in most contact center applications today is artificial intelligence and machine learning. With this technology, you can increase the number of agent evaluations from the typical 1 to 3% of calls that are evaluated to 100%. Now, how is this done? The technology uses the 1 to 3% of previously manual evaluated calls, along with call metrics and call metadata, to predict what comparable calls would likely be scored had they all been manually evaluated. So this doesn't remove human evaluation, but it allows you the trending of 100% of your interactions, giving you a more holistic view of your customer experience and of your agent's performance. The same technology can be used for your post-call surveys. Regardless of what survey solution you might be using, you can integrate your survey results into your WFO application and predict what customers were likely to have responded with had they taken the time to do your post-call surveys. So we all know that response rates for surveys, whether online or via the phone, usually lag, and they're about in the 3 to 4% range. So this doesn't really give you a holistic view of what your customers are saying, only a very small subset. So with analytics and artificial intelligence, you can leverage your customer survey and apply a like score to a like call and trend your predicted surveys and your net promoter scores to give you a more holistic view of what your customers are thinking. Another application that's enabled through artificial intelligence and machine learning is text-to-speech and the ability to do sentiment analysis. Through this technology, you can detect and classify the customer's sentiment or mood or attitude, and it will deliver a sentiment score, whether positive, negative, or neutral, for every voice-transcribed customer interaction. So there's no need to set up categories or manually monitor calls or study transcripts. The sentiment analysis provides essential insight into the customer perception of the organization's brand, product, operations, and agent's performance. It delivers automated, straightforward, and accurate analysis of customers' attitudes, and it enables organizations to promptly identify root causes of concern and to mitigate problems before they undermine the bottom line. So here are the few examples of what sentiment analysis will allow you to do. It will allow you to proactively identify customers who are unhappy before they hit a critical level. It will determine whether and how sentiment varies days of the week, right? Or months of the year, right? Or times of the month. Right? It will also allow you to see how the customer experience is improving or declining. So you can do a lot of trending in this area. So again, with today's technologies that are available, these are things that are typically out of the box with little or no setup or maintenance. The last but not least area that can really bring up your contact center IQ is with the use of comprehensive business intelligence. Now, through the use of integrations and application programming interfaces, all your data, regardless of whether it's coming from your Salesforce CRM, your IVR, your ACD, whether or not it's coming from WFM, QM, or even your HR system, it can all be mashed together, and reports can be automated to provide you with a single view of the truth. If I was with you all in person, I would ask you to raise your hand if you've ever spent hours or even days trying to merge Excel extracts from various different applications into a combined spreadsheet. And I would wager that most everyone in the room, in your virtual rooms, would raise your hands. Okay? Now, with today's intelligent WFO products, you can bring together many data sources from totally different applications into a centralized data mart for combined reporting. And it doesn't take IT or SQL experts to create these merged reports. So I hope that this has inspired you with some ideas on how to increase your contact center IQ and the kinds of technologies that are available to you today. For other ideas and white papers on various contact center topics, please visit the Calabria website. And thank you so much for your time.
Hey,
Back
great.
to you, Bob.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Robin. Now, just want to remind everybody, if you do have questions for Robin or actually Craig, who's coming up, feel free to type them into the question box. Now I'm going to pass the event over to Craig Pence. Again, he is the Vice President of Risk Solutions at Neustar. Welcome to the broadcast, Craig.
Hey, thanks a lot, Bob, and it's a pleasure to join you guys today. So again, just a real quick introduction. So I'm Craig Pence. I run Neustar's risk and compliance business. Been with the company for a little over 13 years now, and have been involved in bringing a lot of different solutions to market to help our customers optimize their inbound and outbound interactions. And that's really what I wanted to do here today over the next 14 minutes or so, share some best practices for solutions that we're seeing your peers leverage. So whether we're talking about an inbound call to the contact center or you doing some form of outreach, right? This idea of authoritative identity and really knowing who is at the other end of the transaction. I think Robin said it perfectly a few times, right? A single view of the truth. I mean, that's what we're really focused on here. Being able to authoritatively say, I know that is Craig Pence on the other end of that inbound transaction, or I know that's Craig Pence when I'm making an outreach to him. And the only way to do that is with authoritative identity. So that's going to be our real focus for the day. So just to set a little bit of that stage, right? Regardless if we're talking about voice or chat or SMS, you're interacting with your customers across a wide breadth of applications. But the fundamental challenge in leveraging identity is that in today's world, identity changes so rapidly, right? You can see some stats here about the number of people who move or change their phone numbers or change their name, or IP addresses are obviously changing very frequently. So how can you keep your CRM data up to date so that you can fully leverage the value of that in the contact center? And that's something we work very closely with our customers in helping them with understanding the baseline of the quality of their data, and then being able to use that interaction, again, via across all of the different channels to update that information. But then at the same time, as I'm sure everyone is aware, fraud has become a much more prevalent in the contact center, especially as things like card not present have come to the market. So when the fraudsters get shut down in one channel, they open that up and go to the next channel. So we're going to talk a little bit about not just how we can improve operations and deliver customer experiences, but also how we can help keep the bad guys from getting into the contact center or you contacting them when you're doing your outreach. So just a very quick level set on Neustar, right? We sit at a very unique position, sort of at the crossroads between the United States telecommunications network and the digital network. So we drive 85% plus of all caller name transactions in the United States. We see over 90% of all browsers, and we have 250 plus partners who are constantly feeding us information, so that every 15 minutes we have algorithms running to give you that single version of the truth, so that if all we see is a phone number, we know who is at the other end of that phone call. Or if we see a phone number and a name and an address, we can tell you if those pieces of data are all tied together or not, and then attributes that can help you not only understand their linkage, but how long they've been linked, and therefore how trustworthy of a source they actually are. So we're going to talk about inbound and outbound. I'm going to start on the inbound side and talk about how we can leverage ANI and or phone number and some best practices that we're seeing some of your peers in the industry use to identify more callers, so improving the customer experience, reducing friction, lessening operational costs, and then, of course, mitigating fraud. So I'm sure many of you utilize this practice today, right? And inbound calls coming in, and from your IVR or your switch, you're taking that ANI and doing a query into your CRM network and attempting to make a match. And there are strong ROI metrics around being able to do that. I've seen it as high as $15 per call when you're able to contain it inside the IVR, but there are other advantages besides just containment. So, in this scenario, obviously, again, phone numbers change fairly frequently, right? We've got an inbound call, and we're not able to match that, in this case, to to the utility customer CRM data. So traditionally, you might ask for an account number or last 4 digits of your social security number, or try some other means to authenticate them, but a lot of consumers don't like to put that information in, so you're unable to build that link between the phone number and the customer. So we spend a lot of time trying to help companies solve this problem, right? And there's really 2 components of it, because as I mentioned earlier, right, as fraud has become more and more prevalent, fraudsters realize that, you know, if I call and I'm able to, I've stolen Craig Pence's PII, so I know his name, his address, and his phone number. If I can now spoof his phone number over the network, that's another step in the authentication process. So we're doing a lot of work. We've actually built a trust lab and are working with the carriers on this notion of shake and stirred, right, which is effectively being able to certify a phone call just like you can certify a web address or a Twitter account. So we can say in an authoritative manner that we know that phone number belongs to, you know, AT&T Wireless, and AT&T is confirming from us that that phone and that device are making the call, and that call is terminating where we think it is terminating. So in doing that, we eliminate the risk of then using that phone number in the authentication process. So again, here it was a number that the customer didn't have. Because of the intelligence we have behind the scenes, we're able to help them build that linkage. So we take the name, address, alternate phone numbers, alternate members of the household, go into their system, create the match, and from there, you know, it's very much business as usual. So those are very often easy business cases to make. Here's just the results from a case study from one of the leading CSPs, which is a cable company, for those that don't know CSP, right? So implementing this service, not only mitigating fraud, we were able to increase the identification rates by nearly 40%, which, again, so from a containment perspective and keeping that call full self-service inside the IVR, the savings were $3.4 million. The reducing misroutes, right, where someone doesn't identify themselves, there's no intelligence to figure out what they're likely calling about, and that introduces, you know, routing from one group to another. The added identification created another $2.1 million in savings there, and then, you know, decreased just general call handle time, so that when we did have a match and pass that information to the agent, they didn't have to go through additional authentication. All of that information was already present there on their screen. So that was a little bit on the inbound side and the work that we're doing. I'm going to transition now to outbound and sort of frame it the same way, but with an added component. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the risks associated with Tcpa compliance. It's a huge ask that we get asked to help with all of the time, and then building upon Tcpa compliance and the reassigned number issue specifically is, you know, this notion of how do I optimize my dialing strategy, so make the least amount of calls at the best possible time to the best possible number in order to get that consumer on the phone. And then finally, I'll wrap up with a little bit more around some new industry initiatives to help combat fraud for outbound use cases. So this is a case study that talks a little bit about the Tcpa risk, and I'm sure everyone is familiar. So the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, right? There was a declaratory ruling in 2015, and then there was just recently a DC Circuit ruling to attempt to clarify some of the declaratory rulings. But at the end of the day, you know, it's all about consent and what is and isn't an auto dialer, and has a phone number been reassigned or not. And you know, because we play so heavily in the identity space, helping companies with this notion of reassigned numbers is really the sweet spot. And like being able to say, Craig Pence gave me consent 5 years ago to call him if he was ever late with a credit card payment. Now I'm late, so we want to reach out to Craig, right? If that number is now Bob Jones's number, every time I call them, it's a $1,500 fine. So we help companies understand, is your CRM data up to date as of this moment when you're about to make that outreach? And as soon as we started working with companies to help them mitigate that risk, it just made good sense that there's a strong correlation between a good verified phone number and their ability to get that person on the phone. So you can see the beginnings of that in this chart with the best, better, bad, and worst, and the revenues that they were able to get per dial. This is clearly a collections use case. But then we started to add, there's additional intelligence in the marketplace, so information about what type of phone is it, how long has the phone been in service, what times of day is the phone most active. Applying all of that intelligence on top of knowing is that Craig Pence's phone number or not drives a lot of value and helps companies to make less calls and in this case collect more dollars, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. This use case resulted in $15 million more dollars in collections with the same number of dials that they were making previously. So just optimizing based upon known verification rates and other attributes to improve the best time to reach out to that person. Another area where we're doing a lot of work, as everyone is also probably aware, Chairman Pai at the FCC is very interested in stopping Robo dials, and carriers have started to block phone numbers. So we're helping customers white label their numbers, so we make sure that the carriers don't block the numbers, that the app providers don't block the numbers, and that your calls that are legitimate aren't flagged as potentially spam or spoofed and therefore blocked. And then adding on that, on the wireless side, is this notion of being able to deliver custom content just like you would on a web page, but via an inbound call, because obviously in making that outbound call, the goal is to engage the consumer. So as you can see here, whether it's a cable company calling to say, we're spending $300 to roll this truck, we want to make sure when we pull up outside and make a call, you're going to answer it and we can get into the house. Or if you're a credit card company and you're calling to verify a transaction, you want that consumer to pick up. And in today's market, when someone sees a number that's not in their address book and there's no caller name, there's a very low likelihood that they're actually going to answer the phone. So being able to push out this custom content for outbound is just another way to help optimize outbound contact rates. And then finally is this notion of phone diversion. I've mentioned the fraudsters a few times. It seems every time you stick your thumb in the dike, right, they figure out where the next leak is and the next vulnerability. We actually first started to see phone takeover become a major issue with the advent of Apple Pay. So fraudsters would take a voice over IP line, so I have a triple play at home, but I don't even use my phone, that they would walk into a wireless store with my bill, port that voice over IP line to a mobile device, so now they look like Craig Pence, they have Craig Pence's phone, they have a stolen Craig Pence credit card, they load that into Apple Pay and start making charges. So we work with a lot of the financial institutions to help them look for these triggers, right? So not just does the identity verify, but have there been other events that would lead us to believe that identity may have been compromised? Now we're starting to see more and more, when customers are making outbound dials to their customers, the introduction of fraud. So I'll use an example in the banking world, right? I run a credit card transaction. It's $10,000. It triggers their fraud engine. They want to make an outbound dial to make sure that Craig Pence actually made that call. So there's fundamentally three ways a fraudster can divert that call to themselves in order to say, yeah, this is Craig. It's okay to run that transaction. That is porting, which I already spoke to, right? Taking that phone from one carrier to another or one device type to another. The other is hacking into your phone, your account, and temporarily call forwarding that number to the fraudster's phone number, and then once they verify a transaction, they forward the call back and the consumer is none the wiser. And then the third is this notion of SIM swap, right? Changing the SIM card or the device in order to impersonate that consumer again, and then releasing that back so that the consumer is none the wiser. And the mobile network operators, so all four of the big carriers, have all made APIs available to integrate to. There's a group of aggregators, Neustar being one of them, to start to leverage this intelligence so that we can work with the brands to help them better understand. This looks like it's Craig Pence. I think it's Craig Pence I'm reaching out to. I just want to verify that it is actually Craig Pence at the other end of the transaction. So with that, I want to thank everybody. I know that was a little bit of information through the fire hose, but if anybody has any follow-up questions, happy to answer them at the end. You can see my phone and email address here and the website, and thank you very much for the time today. Back to you, Bob.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Craig. Seems like there's many different ways that the fraudsters are trying to compromise people's identities. Well, now we're going to pass the event over again to Barbara Bacigalupi. She's a solution executive at NICE. Welcome to the broadcast, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Bob. Very happy to be here with you today. So I'm going to talk about NICE's perspective of the Intelligent Contact Center. And for us, that basically involves reaching for a 360 view of the customer. And so I'm going to define, what that means in a couple of different phases. Number one, we believe that it's best to create insight by knowing every touch point in a customer's journey and understand the intent and content of each of those touch points and analyze how they relate to each other. The next step would be then to predict outcomes in their overall interaction with your organization. So predicting the next action that a customer might take, identify areas that will create an improvement and satisfaction in that experience, and use prediction models to improve the customer experience and from that, customer loyalty. And finally, take action. So measure performance and quality, use information from all the various touch points, the IVR, the web, and the contact center, and put new processes into place and improve on the old ones. So in order to accomplish that, we offer solutions that can be utilized, which we call customer engagement analytics, and I'll go through each one of those. So basically a comprehensive or a 360 approach to customer engagement starts with the contact center and the unstructured data that can give the organization accurate insights into how to optimize not only the customer's interactions with the contact center, but also how to better contain traffic outside the contact center. So in order to do that, we utilize cross-channel interaction recording, which captures unstructured and structured interactions and transaction data from multiple channels, including phone calls, chat, emails, customer feedback, and social media. And then interaction analytics uncovers the valuable insights that are hidden in these customer interactions. It uses advanced technology for analyzing speech, text, call flow, and sentiment to understand the root cause of issues and drive business results. Now, interaction analytics naturally grows into IVR optimization because so many of the insights from the interaction analytics will point to problems in the IVR system, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Likewise, as digital channels are layered in, such problems as in the IVR or in website interactions begin to be uncovered in the contact center and can be more fully analyzed and optimized with a layer of digital containment. And then finally, all of these analyses are further enriched with the final, most far-reaching customer journey optimization. And I'll talk more about that in a moment as well. So customer engagement analytics captures and analyzes interactions, transactions, and customer lifecycle events to provide a complete or 360 view of the customer journey. Leveraging advanced big data technology, interaction analytics, and predictive models, it identifies individual customers and sequences their interactions across time and touch points to understand the context of their contacts, uncover patterns, predict needs, and personalize interactions in real time. In this way, complete customer engagement analytics provides organizations with the best framework for understanding your customer and then putting you on a track for positive interaction transformation. So let's talk about the first sort of layer of customer interaction, and that is IVR. Well, before we get to that, there's some fun facts about the missed opportunity that we have with customer service containment. So for many organizations, the IVR experience is very much a missed opportunity. And some of the interesting facts around that are that IVR accounts for almost 3/4 of contact center traffic. Now, IVR is ubiquitous. It's a major component of contact center customer experience and a key touch point for customers. So if you want to be a customer-centric organization that cares about the customer experience, then you need to care about IVR and can't necessarily overlook that opportunity. It's often the very first time that customers interact with your contact center. So statistics show us that 82% of customers are dissatisfied. This obviously has implications for brand perception and loyalty. About 90% of consumers report that the contact center experience influences their perception of a business, and about 2/3 would consider taking their business elsewhere after a negative experience. But that's not the only way that a dissatisfactory IVR can adversely impact a business. The majority of callers are bypassing IVR self-service to reach an agent in voice. And of course, that service cost per transaction is 10 to 12 times higher for the voice channel than for the IVR. So every time there's an agent transfer that could be avoided by providing an effective IVR self-service, it wastes about $5 in unnecessary OpEx. So there are two major routes through which the IVR experience can affect the bottom line, and it's estimated that about 80% of businesses stand to benefit in one of these areas. But only 7% of organizations invest in improving the IVR. And primarily that's because they either overestimate their performance or they know that they need to improve, but they face challenges in executing upon that. They don't have the data and the tools needed to gain actionable insight about the IVR improvement opportunities and the needs of their customers. And of course, analytics technology lets you really execute well on the IVR experience in terms of providing overall enhancement for this first touch point into your organization. Okay, so IVR optimization enables organizations to improve the IVR customer journeys, increase containment, and drive customer sat by enabling both aggregated and granular customer journey visualization, IVR process investigation, such as menu complexity, and business scenario analysis, such as authentication, payments, etc. Ideally, these capabilities drive business outcomes of reducing operational costs by reducing transfers between agents and increasing IVR containment, and at the same time increasing customer satisfaction by improving the experience within the IVR journey and increasing self-service within the IVR. Now, because the cost to serve is 10 to 12 times greater in the contact center, there's also a very clear business case that can be made for the return on investment of IVR optimization. So in other words, IVR improvements represent a quick win to improve our operational costs, and a change in your IVR is a differentiating change that customers will immediately notice. So similarly then, the opportunity is there for the digital containment or digital optimization. We know that we operate in a market that is now a consumer-centric digital economy, and there's lots of ways that that's reflected. Multiple touch points demand a seamless UI. We're very vulnerable to the customer experience and satisfaction via social media. I mean, there's lots of different definitions of the digital economy, but one of the research points that I saw that I thought was interesting was that research says the current global market value for self-service digital technologies is $54 billion, and that's projected to reach $83 billion by 2021. So companies are really investing in digital technologies to interact with their customers, but yet digital transformation fails without digital containment. And so digital containment can be defined as understanding multi- and single-channel analysis of digital journeys, reviewing specific digital touchpoints for root cause evaluation, ensuring those that enter digital channels remain and accomplish their tasks within digital channels, and operationalize through improving the customer interface, experience, satisfaction, and profitability. So all of these various channels come together to sort of describe the steps along the customer journey. And so at NICE, we define the customer journey very simply: the interactions that a customer has with the enterprise in order to complete a specific goal. So customer intent is very important when we're looking to develop and implement the intelligent contact center. So again, some fun facts for you. According to research, 89% of companies expect to compete mostly on the basis of customer experience. 87% of companies see digital transformation as an opportunity to develop a competitive edge. Yet, 76% of customers experience challenges when switching between channels. So it is imperative for companies to be able to answer specific questions such as these. And so that brings us to the overall optimization of customer journeys. Now, customer journey optimization is defined as allowing organizations to accelerate digital transformation, maximize customer retention, and reduce customer effort across all touch points. These capabilities drive the business outcomes of optimizing self-service channels by reducing deflection rates across channels and improving the customer experience and increasing customer satisfaction by streamlining digital processes. In other words, customer journey optimization enables companies to obtain an end-to-end contextual view of the customer journey across all touchpoints and accelerate digital transformation, maximize customer retention, and improve the customer experience across all touchpoints. And so the successful analytics program toward creating an intelligent contact center is really comprised of 4 key components. First of all, it's the expertise. We recommend that you gather together the stakeholders who will help execute on an analytics program and get everyone on board. Secondly would be the applications that you utilize. Make sure each stakeholder has its own version. Executives for dashboard view, analysts, contact center managers, agents, and other line of business owners. We call this the idea of democratizing the information and making it available across all those various stakeholders. Another area, of course, is the architecture and technology. We recommend making sure that you have the technology at your fingertips that can pull in all those channels of information and process 100% of the interactions with agent or journey touchpoints. But more than that, you need an architecture that can sort through all the data and present it in a ready-to-analyze format. And finally, the governance. More so than anything else, we feel that governance is critical. Analytics is not something you buy, it's something you do, we like to say. It's not static, it changes and evolves, lives and breathes. And so putting a governance program into place is critical to ensuring that you're getting the ROI that you need and that your analyses are continuing to be successful. And what worked one day may not work the next day. So I invite you to learn more about customer engagement analytics at Interactions 2018 in Orlando next month. And again, you can visit our website, nice.com analytics, to learn more. And thank you for your attendance today. Back to you, Bob.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Barbara. But before you go, I just have a quick question. I also want to remind everybody that if you do have any questions for our panelists, now's the time to type them into the question box. So you had mentioned a couple of things, Barbara. You had mentioned unstructured interactions like voice, email, chat on the customer journey side. How does that integration work?
So our platform allows you to drill into insights from both directions. So the Nexidia analytics efforts can track upward into the larger journey of a certain customer data set, or journey analytics efforts can drill down into the Nexidia analytics to locate smaller subsets of interactions for easier analysis of use cases. For example, whether we're looking at various channels of interaction, we can, with our solutions, we can present a heat map, for example, that will show you what was the customer's original intent. Let's say if they came into the system and into your organization from the Ivr system, and then if they also eventually zeroed out to speak to an agent, what was that conversation actually about? So we can drill down into these interactions to find answers in terms of what was the customer's ultimate intent. And then, looking at behavior can indicate what people are looking for and not finding it, and give you an idea of where you can optimize that initial channel in the first place to prevent that transfer out to the contact center.
Okay, great. Hey, Robin, I have a question for you. Again, this is Robin from Calabrio. You were talking about dynamic availability when it comes to scheduling, and I'm sure that's a great thing for employees. Do you also have like traditional static schedules as well?
Yes, Bob, you certainly can. You can take dynamic availability or dynamic scheduling, and you can mix it with traditional and static schedules as well. So many contact centers who are using dynamic scheduling may use this as an incentive for senior agents or high-performing employees, or perhaps just for one team that might have more part-time workers or who use split shifts, or may just have one team that they want to start using the dynamic scheduling with to get comfortable with the effectiveness of dynamic scheduling. So definitely the different kinds of scheduling methods, most of today's WFO applications, you can mix the different types of scheduling options.
Okay, great. Hey, Craig, you covered a lot of ground, and I just wanted to ask you, how do you minimize the false positive matches when you're trying to link an inbound phone number against your CRM data? I know that you touched on some techniques, but if you could kind of just clarify some of that.
Yeah, sure, Bob. I mean, normally when we start to engage with customers, right, there's some benchmarking that is initially done as to the quality of the intelligence that they have in their CRM, right? So we can say, we know this phone number is linked to Craig Pence and this address information. And then if we see that the data is flawed at the beginning, we can flag it as such, so that when the customer goes through their process of their business as usual of trying to do their own match, they may get a match, but they'll have a flag inside that record that they need to pass that call to an agent in order to handle that, because it appears that that the data is inaccurate or aged, so it needs to be updated. And then we can also do that in the real-time environment, where we may look and say, okay, we would have a match on this phone number, but we actually have different other identifiers, right? So we don't say that name and address go with that phone number anymore. So we're building the match, but also delivering back a flag that says, hey, caution here, right? You probably want to use an agent to do an additional layer of authentication.
Okay, great. Hey, Barbara, what's the easiest way for a company to get their journey analytics off the ground? I know that's a big question.
Well, it's a great question, and really what we recommend is starting small with something that demonstrates an easy, quick ROI. So we recommend either starting with the Nexidia speech analytics or with the Ivr Optimization. So the approach that we typically take is we get the stakeholders sort of sold on the bigger picture by demonstrating a fast time to insight and return on investment, where it can be very tangible up front, and then build the journey optimization on after that. So that's the two areas where we typically recommend customers start, speech analytics or IVR.
Okay, great. Robin, with predictive analytics, how many calls are needed for the system to start to predict all of the results with confidence?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, that can really depend on the solution that you're using. But with the Calabrio solution, if you've got a variety of different evaluation forms, you would need about 1,000 results on an evaluation form. and then from that, it can then predict 100% of what the evaluation scores would be once it has a baseline of about 1,000 uses of an individual form.
Okay. Craig, you had mentioned some rulings in the circuit court, and quite some very large fines as well. How do you see the recent DC court ruling impacting and then reassigning numbers as an issue as it relates to TCPA compliance? It seemed pretty scary.
Yeah, and Bob, I have to do my chief privacy officer will want me to do the I'm not an attorney disclaimer before I provide my opinion on that, right? But the reassigned number issue, it is one fundamentally grounded in consent, right? Theoretically, 5 years ago, Craig Pence gave you consent to call that number, right? But you go to call that number today, and it's Bob's number. So Bob never gave you consent. So there was, I referenced earlier, this declaratory ruling in 2015 where they tried to address the reassigned issue number with, I think, what is now admittedly even by the FCC, a poor attempt at some form of safe haven. You basically got one get-out-of-jail-free call. So if you called Bob, regardless if you got him on the phone or not, that was your one effort. And after that, if you called, you were then opening yourself up again to the fines. So the recent D.C. Circuit ruling didn't do away with any of that. They still said that consent is still provided by the original party. So the fact that a number is reassigned doesn't mean that it's okay to call Bob when you're trying to call Craig. And they did say that that method wasn't going to hold up, but they didn't say what alternative there was. So in my opinion, they effectively just did away with the one free call. So companies still face that liability of dialing reassigned phone numbers.
So it's actually gotten a little bit more difficult, or more risk is involved, it sounds like.
Yes, that is my opinion of the matter. Yes.
Okay, great. Robin, you're talking about sentiment analysis. Can it tell if a person's yelling at the agent, and then does it just give them like a negative score?
That's a great question, Bob, and one that everybody asks us. So technologies are definitely available that can determine if somebody's yelling or the decibel level or decibel changes. But years ago, it was found that this was not really reliable to really determine the attitude of the caller. Because as we all know, some people talk louder when they're upset, but might also elevate their tone of voice when they're happy. So also we know people who, when they're really pent up and angry, might lower their voice when they're upset, right? So not to mention the volume differences when using cell phones or talking from a noisy environment. So the fact that we can detect decibel level in technology doesn't really give us accurate results and really resulted in too many false positives. So most people today are offering in their speech technologies really the ability to use the word choice for the indicator of the category or the sentiment that the customer has, because it's really much better of an indicator of how they're actually feeling by using particular word choices and phrases. So great question.
Good. Craig, we have one last question here. You had mentioned, fraudsters are very good at switching from one channel to another. Do you see any? Do you see them leveraging any specific method over another with respect to contact center-based fraud?
Yeah, I mean, right in the inbound channel, I would say the largest vector we're still seeing is the spoofing, right? And spoofing takes lots of different forms, right? Whether it's ported or it's just being done over the network. But that is certainly the biggest hot button when we're talking to companies in the marketplace about the inbound side. I would say on the outbound side, it's rapidly becoming call forwarding, just because it's not the most difficult thing to hack into someone's account, and call forwarding lets you very easily take over that number for a very short period of time and then reassign it back to the consumer, so they're much less likely to know that fraud was just committed. Whereas porting their number is taking it away from them, or swapping out their SIM information, right? Their mobile phone is going to stop working. So you have a very short window in order to commit the fraud in that scenario. But in the forwarding scenario, it's a temporary thing. So it's, again, much easier for the fraudster to conduct the fraud and the consumer being none the wiser.
Great. I see we're coming up on the top of the hour. I'd like to thank everyone that joined us today. I'd also like to thank our speakers. We have Robin Butterfield, Contact Center Analytics Consultant at Calabrio, Greg Pence, Vice President of Risk Solutions at Neustar, and Barbara Bacigalupe, Solution Executive at Nexidea. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived, which will be tomorrow. You can use the same URL you used today if you want to send it to a colleague, or if you want to get back into the web event. But don't worry, you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow. And just for participating in today's event, you could win this Echo Dot. The winner will be posted on Destination CRM on April 30th. So please visit our site to see if you're the winner. And also, if you'd like to join us next week in Washington, D.C. for CRM Evolution, you'll get a discount code for $100 in an email tomorrow. And again, thanks for joining us, and that concludes our broadcast for today.